It is April 30th, 2024, 1 o'clock p.m. I'm Phil Albrecht, hearing examiner for the City of Oak Harbor. We have 3 applications to consider this afternoon, a hearing to be held on each separately, 2 conditional use permits and 1 rezone application. And the hearing format for all 3 will be the same. We'll start off with a staff presentation to give an overview of what the request is all about. Then we'll move on to applicant comments, not mandatory, but if any applicants out there want to add to their application, they'll be given that opportunity. After applicant comments, we then move on. Are we getting a little feedback, Sarah?
On our end, everything sounds clear.
Oh, okay, good. That's odd. Yeah, on my end, I'm getting a little feedback, but as long as you're not getting it, we're good then. Once the applicant comments are done, then we go to the purpose of the hearings, which is to hear from the public. It could be for these applications, they're fairly benign. We may not get too many public comments today. After all public comments are done, we go back to staff to answer any questions that were asked and to provide any information they think is necessary to complete the record. And then finally, the applicant gets final word. I get 10 business days on the conditional use permits to issue a final decision. So with that, let me, am I able, this is an unusual, this is called Bring for virtual hearing. Oh, I do have a share screen function. Perfect. Let me pull up the one I need to pull up. Oh boy. Okay. So Sarah, at this point, can you see, do I have the first conditional use up, the Christian Fellowship Church?
Yes, we can see the staff report on screen.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm gonna expand that. Hold on a second. Shoot. All right. Just want to get to the exhibit page. All right, there we go. Okay, so staff on this one, first we'll start off with the conditional use permit case number 2311-0071. That's the Filipino Christian Fellowship Church. It's going to be our first hearing today. By state law, I'm only allowed to consider evidence that's put into the record, which is composed of any exhibits that are admitted into the record and any testimony that's presented during the hearing. And staff has put together a staff report along with a bunch of attachments they want to be put into the record, which are up on the screen right now. This is this first page of the staff report, which includes application materials, the zoning and vicinity map, hearing examiner decision on a prior church use of property. We got public notice documents which show that required public notice was provided, and then public comments that were received. I think on this one it was basically one letter saying they supported use of the property for the church. Is that correct? I think it was just one comment letter so far, right? Okay. And who do we have staff doing presentation today? I take it, is that the person at the podium?
Yes, it is I, Ray Lindenberg, senior planner.
Okay. And, sorry, I didn't get your last name, sir.
Lindenberg, L-I-N-D.
Oh, Mr. Lindenberg.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So at this point, I just want to add if there are any objections to entry of this Mr. Lindenberg's staff report along with those exhibits 2 through 6. Any objections, or does anyone need to see any of those documents? If you're participating virtually, just to, press on your virtual hand. Is my video not showing? Let me get that going for you. There we go. Okay. There we go. Much better. All right, so any objections over entry of the staff report and its attachments? Okay, hearing none, then we'll admit exhibits 1 through 6. And Mr. Lindenberg, let me swear you in. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
All right, apologies. Our room is set up a little bit differently. My back is to you. But essentially what I'm going to do here is go very briefly over this staff report. This is a fairly simple and straightforward application. There are a couple of things to note. A recent change to our conditional use permit ordinance has allowed for conditional use permit holders to transfer the conditional use permit to new ownership as long as that ownership or that use hasn't lapsed for more than a year. In this case, there was a church in that space previously, but it had been more than a year, so that's why we're here today to do the conditional use permit. The second thing is, and you mentioned it in the attachments or the exhibits, was the decision previously regarding a church. That came from an appeal process that's in our ordinance. We had a decision or an interpretation by our previous Development Services Director that did not permit a church in the CBD zone, and they appealed that, and the hearing examiner determined that it was similar enough to other uses traditionally found in a central business district to allow for it. So what we have done by that step is, because it's not specifically permitted in the CBD in our code, we have gone through each of these subsequent church applications as a conditional use permit process. And so that was the most similar way that the previous hearing examiner had determined to approach that process. We have processed a couple of them since that time, and then this is one today. So based on our analysis of the application, we see no issues with having a church located there. They have a significant parking area at the building that they're going to be utilizing. They have other businesses within that building, but they don't really overlap in hours, so we're not too concerned about that. And there is also significant street parking in the area. We don't see any issues with that at all. We did have the fire chief and the building department take a look at the actual space itself. They don't see any issues with it, so we are comfortable with making a recommendation for approval of this conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lindberg. All right, let's move on to applicants. Did the applicants want to add anything at this point? If you do, you need to step up to the podium, let us know what your name is, how to spell it, and then I'll swear you in.
My name is Faye Reyes, spelled F-E for my first name. Reyes, R-E-Y-E-S.
Okay, Ms. Reyes, let me swear you in. Just raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, great. Go ahead. Oh, you can go ahead now. Yeah. Oh, did you want to say something, Ms. Reyes, or?
No, I don't really have any question,
Oh,
but
okay. Okay.
hopefully.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, thank you for coming along. All right. At this point, I'll ask if there are any members of the public that want to say anything. Anybody out there who wants to testify on this particular project? Now's your chance before the hearing is closed. Okay. I'll go ahead then. And looks like since there were no applicant comments or public comments, I can just go ahead and close the hearing. And it's a very straightforward application. I mean, there's obviously not going to be any impacts that weren't previously addressed with prior uses of the project. So we don't really have to worry too much about impacts on neighbors. They won't change from what's been there in the past. So I can approve that, and I'll get that approval out within the next 10 business days, which is a couple weeks. So we'll get that written decision out. Thank you all for participating on this hearing. If you're here for this hearing, obviously you're free to go. You can go anytime, obviously, but there's no need to stay for the next one. So the next application is the same kind of application, another conditional use permit application, same hearing format. We have a staff presentation, then applicant, if they want to say anything, then public, and then back to staff and final applicant word. Looks like we have a different staff member today. Who's doing the staffing on this one now?
My name is Nolan Grunska. I'm the assistant planner with the City of Oak Harbor.
Is that Grunska? Is that correct?
Yes, Grunska, G-R-U-N-S-K-A.
Okay, perfect. Let me put up the staff report, and hopefully, I can't really, it's hard to tell from my end which window is being shared. So, Ms. Heller, is this the Whidbey Island Bake Shop staff report at this point?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so this is going to be case number 2401-0009. Same as last time, I need to get, my review's limited to the testimony today and the exhibit put to the record. Mr. Grunska's staff report shows that he wants to get in the application materials, the zoning and vicinity map, and the public noticing documents. There were no public comments on this one. Does anyone need to see any of these documents or have any objection to their entry in the record? Okay, hearing seeing none, then I'll go ahead and admit the staff report along with the exhibits 2 through 4. Mr. Grunska, let me swear you in at this point. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
So again, this is another quite straightforward conditional use application located at 31775 SR20 here in Oak Harbor. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for the occupancy of a commercial tenant unit for use as a bakery and dine-in business. The tenant space was previously used as a vision clinic. The unit is located within the RO zoning district where a restaurant requires a conditional use permit per OHMC 1920. Specifically, the Whidbey Island Bake Shop is proposed to be located in a 1,080 square foot tenant space previously occupied by a vision clinic. Narrative details an intent to produce and serve breads and pastries as well as coffee and tea while hosting 9 dine-in seats according to a preliminary tenant improvement plan. The whole development site includes two single-story commercial buildings with 5 combined tenant spaces and a shared parking area. The other current uses on site include an insurance agent with which the proposed use shares a building, 2 dental clinics, and a massage and spa. The classification of this parcel within the RO zone is intended to help buffer the residential development to the west from SR 20 to the east. Per OHMC 1920-230, it is the purpose of the RO residential office district to provide for areas appropriate for professional and administrative offices. It is intended that such districts shall buffer residential districts, and the development standards are such that offices should be compatible with residential districts. And while a restaurant or coffee house is not named within the intent of this district, staff is supporting and recommending for approval this application for reasons given under item 5 of the conditional use review. It is increasingly common for cities to allow low-impact services and retail uses to buffer and even integrate with residential zones where previously only offices were allowed or preferred. They have been found to complement neighborhood character at appropriate scales without causing undue disruption. For this reason, while only professional and administrative offices are named in the statement for intent for the RO zone, restaurants are specified as a conditional use in the zone according to the use matrix found in the Oak Harbor Municipal Code 1920-1050. As such, staff supports this use with conditions to limit impact as consistent with the intent of the RO residential office district, buffering the impact of the proximity of SR 20 from nearby residential development. In 2023, a similar use was approved by the hearing examiner in the RO zone with support from staff on the grounds of furthering the intent of the zoning district. The conditions that staff have proposed in order to mitigate any potential foreseen impacts are the simple conditions that any future development on the site comply with the applicable standards of the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, that all requirements for building and fire code be met for the building prior to occupancy, that the conditional use permit applies only to the property for which the application is made, and additionally, that any application to expand this use beyond the proposed 1,080 square foot space may be required by the city to obtain an updated conditional use permit, and that the hours of operation for the establishment be limited between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Given these conditions, it is staff's belief that this proposal meets the criteria for a conditional use permit in the Oak Harbor Municipal Code. Sorry, just trying to find that section real quick. 1967-030. The further details regarding the criteria are included in the staff report, but I'll take any questions.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking at page 3 of the staff report dealing with parking, and it applies a standard that is based on number of seats. That seems like an odd parking standard for a bakery shop. Is that the correct? I mean, is that maybe a holdover from the church, or I'm just curious. I mean, how do you?
No, so that's just what our code says regarding this this restaurant and bakery use. It's
No, I think it's at the restaurant area. Okay, that makes more sense to me. I was thinking it's just a bakery, but yeah, you're right. It's got the, okay, that makes sense then. Okay, perfect. All right, well, let's move on to, other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the only change I saw was that it might increase a little traffic, and that was considered minor overall. And just no exterior alterations, right? This is just,
correct. The only anticipated follow-up for this is a tenant improvement, which has to do with the interior structure. There's no site changes.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, let's move on to applicants. If the applicants want to say anything, if you don't want to say anything, you don't need to go to the podium, but if the applicants want to add something, now's the chance. Doesn't look like we have any takers on that. Okay, how about members of the public? Anybody out there want to comment on this? It's in the hearing room or participating virtually. Not seeing any takers there either. So I think I can go ahead and close this one. Again, very straightforward application. Yeah, when a use comes in an existing building and doesn't increase impacts, there's obviously no reason to have much concern, and certainly not in this one. So we'll approve that one too in the next couple of weeks. So thank you, Mr. Grunkin. Appreciate your comments today. All right, so finally we have the rezone application, and let me pull that up on my screen. Put that one. And the process is a little different on this one in that I'm not making a final decision, I'm making a recommendation to the City Council. And the reason for that is by state law, rezones must be approved by ordinance, and only the City Council has the authority to adopt ordinances. Some cities and counties get that wrong and still try to make me do the final decision, but Oak Harbor got it right, and they're sending it to the City Council. Mr. Lindberger, one question about process. Every city's a little different how they handle the recommendations to the City Council. Does the Oak Harbor City Council allow the public to comment on the hearing examiner recommendation, or do you know how they do it? It might even differ from year to year. I'm not sure if I just want to advise the public in case they're wondering.
Yeah, I believe there's a closed record review and decision. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And some city councils address the closed record review requirement by allowing the public to speak but not raise anything new. They just have to say what was said before. And yeah, I was just kind of curious how Harvard dealt with that. But they just don't usually take public comment, period.
Yeah.
Which sounds like, okay. So if you want to be heard, obviously be sure you get your comments into me, and I'll forward those to the City Council. I understand there was a letter submitted today, and we'll of course get that forwarded to the City Council with whatever recommendation I have to make to them. So let me share my screen on this one. You get the exhibits in, and it should be this one. Okay. So you should be seeing Mr. Lindberg's page 1 of his staff report. I should say this is case number 24020016 for the hearing examiner, or excuse me, the rezone application. And like the other ones, we have Exhibit 1 is the staff report, Exhibit 2 the application materials, Exhibit 3 is zoning map and vicinity map, and Exhibit 4 public noticing documents. And we'll get let's get that public comment letter in as Exhibit 5. And Ms. Heller, maybe can you tell us who the letter was written by and what the date of the letter is?
Yes, the letter was written by Brian Montana. It arrived via email today, April 30th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll make the letter from Mr. Montana, Exhibit 5. Does anyone need to see any of these documents? Do you have any objections to their entry in the record? Okay, seeing none, we'll admit the Exhibits 1 through 5. And Mr. Lindberg, I guess I'll swear you in separately, for this is a separate proceeding. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is an application for rezoning, as you mentioned. The subject parcel is approximately 0.69 acres located at the southwest corner of Southeast Ely Street and Southeast Cabot Drive. It is currently undeveloped. There was a house on the property up until about 2015 or 16 when it was demolished. So there are a number of trees and grasses and shrubs and things like that were left over, but other than that, it is an empty lot. Currently is split zone between R1, which is our single family residential, and R2, which is a limited multiple family residential zoning designation. And it's roughly, there's not an exact measurement there because our zone districts don't include that measurement, roughly in half, split north to south. So you have an east half and a west half. The eastern portion is the R1 portion. That's closer to some of the existing single-family residential development that's on the east side of Ely Street. And then the west half is zoned R2, which is adjacent to an existing medical office building and a retail shopping center that includes a Home Depot. The intent of that split zoning was to kind of buffer between the single-family residential and the commercial zoning that's to the west. And staff has expressed the desire to kind of rationalize some of these zoning decisions. And we feel that the R1 and R2 are similar enough to the R3, which is the requested zone district, to be the buffer itself instead of having a buffer within the within that property itself. So essentially what they're asking for, the density standards for the R1 zone district are 3 to 9 units per acre and 6 to 12 units per acre for the R2. The R3 zone district is 9 to 16 units per acre. So essentially the existing development, if we left it at the same zoning, would allow for up to 7 units under the existing zoning. If we change it to R3, that will gain 4 units up to 11. As I noted, there are single-family homes to the east across Ely Street. To the north across Cabot is a existing retirement community, a multi-story retirement community, and some more commercial properties to the north and west of the property itself. This is kind of a mixed area, in transition, if you will, between the existing single-family homes and that more recent construction of the commercial site to the west. As you know in the staff report, the property itself was annexed into the city in about 1957. The area was developed early in the stages of the city, the town site of Oak Harbor. 1957 is pretty early in our annexation history. The houses across the way are built generally in the 1960s. But more of that recent development has been a much higher scale. Like I said, there's a Home Depot kind of a kitty corner there to the south and west, and that large office building and larger retirement community to the north. So it's kind of transitioning between the single family and the more large development that's along State Route 20. In 1990, Southeast Cabot Drive was constructed, which provided a connection between SR 20 and the residential areas to the east. It is kind of an awkwardly shaped road. It was originally designed to be an access driveway for the commercial property, but it was deeded to the city and it has become a public right-of-way. It has a weird bend to it, which kind of slows traffic down, which is actually a good thing. So we're going to maintain that frontage there along that street to the north of the parcel. So from a land use designation perspective, our comprehensive plan groups zone districts into land use categories. Our low density land use category, or low intensity land use category, includes R1, R2, and R3. And that is why we can go do a rezone from R1 to R3 without going through a comprehensive plan amendment. So that is what we're doing today. This does not require any additional comprehensive plan review in order to complete this process. During the pre-application process that the applicant went through previously to this application, we did give some comments regarding design components that would mitigate higher density construction on that site. Essentially, those are outlined in the staff report, but I'll go over them kind of by bullet points. Multifamily projects are required to meet all the design standards that are set forth in the Design Regulations and Guidelines document. That's a fairly comprehensive document that talks about landscaping, open space, outdoor living areas, and architectural standards for the building itself. Number two, as part of those design standards, the applicant is advised that the DRG requires what we call four-sided architecture. Essentially what that means is there can't be blank walls facing into neighboring properties or to the street. So you got to have some visual interest on all sides. In this case, staff worked with the applicant to ensure that the north facade facing Southeast Cabot Drive would be an inviting front door to the project, and we feel like he's done a good job with that. You saw the application materials there. And then in OHMC 1946-030, we have standards for project landscaping that includes buffer areas that will help soften the transition between this new project and the existing projects or existing homes to the south. And then landscaping and screening standards will apply to all parking areas. So the applicant did a good job of addressing those comments. Again, this is not to approve the actual site plan itself, just the rezoning, but the site plan was included so that you have a reference of what is being proposed there. So going through our rezoning review, there are a number of criteria that are set forth in OHMC 1966-020, and we do feel that the applicant has met those standards. The first being the proposed rezone is in the best interest of the residents of the city. This rezone will allow greater density. We are facing a situation where we need to provide over 5,000 new homes per our comprehensive plan over the next 20 years. So this will help us head in that direction. We feel that the particular location here, being close to the highway, close to other commercial properties, is good for the standpoint of providing amenities nearby to the potential residents of this project as well. Overall, the zone change will allow for 4 additional units, not a huge number, but it does chip away at that total number that we need to get to. Number 2, the proposed rezone is appropriate because, and it has a list of different standards in there, and the first among them being that the area has really changed since the early 1990s when these zone districts were contemplated. Also, kind of planning theory and planning thought has moved away from the idea of providing buffers by having residential areas kind of increase in density slowly over a large distance. We feel that Ely Street itself is a buffer, and then having an R3 project of good design is also a buffer to the commercial properties that are to the west there. Additionally, we have recent state mandates regarding the density and highlighting a significant need for residential units. We'll keep hammering on that one, I'm sure, for many projects in the future here. The rezone will correct a zone classification or zone boundary that was inappropriate when established. And as I mentioned early on, staff has been kind of working on the idea of kind of rationalizing some of these split zone properties. They don't make a ton of sense because there's no legal description that says exactly where that split happens. And so we either have to do an averaging situation or we can look at rezoning. And I think rezoning is probably the way to go for most of these. The proposed rezone is consistent with the comprehensive plan. As I mentioned, you're in the low intensity residential category. The proposed rezone is consistent with all applicable provisions of this title, including the specific design criteria. We feel that it is, and we included that in there as far as a reference to the design regulations and guidelines to review aesthetic qualities as well. The proposed rezone bears a substantial relation to the public safety, health, and welfare. We do not feel that this will adversely impact any of those. A change from R1 and R2 to R3 results in a potential increase of 4 units. Again, it's not a huge number from the standpoint of traffic and utility provisions and things like that. So we are not concerned about being a substantial detriment to any of those things. Additional traffic added by those additional units will be dispersed in several routes. The site sits at an intersection, a 4-way intersection, and a person could literally go anywhere in the city from that 4-way intersection. They can go straight out to the highway via Cabot Drive. They can head over to the Seaplane Base and Midway Boulevard by going up Southeast 4th Avenue to the east. They can go to the downtown area and other commercial areas by going south on Ely, and they can head north to other commercial areas and ultimately off the island by going north on Ely. So we feel that with that dispersion of traffic, there should be very little impact to the neighborhood with regards to traffic. A site plan of the proposed project is considered. We have attached that to this application. Like I said, we're not attaching it for approval, but just for reference. We do feel that it meets our design criteria and fits into what we are looking for as far as R3 density standards. It is also designed to minimize impacts on public facilities, services, and utilities. Like I mentioned, we're not concerned about traffic because we feel that dispersion will allow traffic to continue throughout the city without any additional undue impact to the neighborhood. We also have all of our city utilities located in the street right-of-way adjacent to the property, and we have no issues with providing those utilities to the property. The proposal is not inconsistent with the surrounding area. As I mentioned, there's existing very large commercial development to the west. That includes a large, substantial office building that is immediately adjacent to the western edge of this property. To the north is a multi-story retirement community. So there are multifamily units to the north and continuing north on Ely Street as well. To the east are single-family homes, but they are separated by a fairly major road there, Ely Street. So we do feel that it does fit in with the neighborhood and is not inconsistent with that mix. The applicant will be able to meet required open space standards that are set forth in the code. That is one of the criteria there. And then all conditions necessary to lessen impacts of the proposed use can be monitored and enforced. Again, these are all included as parts of the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, and we have ways of which that we can enforce those and monitor them. Per recent change to our municipal code, SEPA is not required for this project. We have up to 20 units now that can be SEPA exempt. And then as I noted, or as noted in the staff report there, we've gone through the proper legal notice. We have a site geography chart there that tells you exactly what I've just kind of gone over. And then based on that information, a site-specific rezone such as this application is subject to a public hearing, which we're doing right now, who then, before the hearing examiner, who then forwards a recommendation to the city council for final approval. This application, as I noted again, is for the zoning change only. The applicant intends to apply for site plan review and the appropriate building and civil permits when that is all complete. So based on the information I provided to you today, staff recommends that the hearing examiner review the attached application materials, the staff analysis contained in this report, conduct a public hearing, gather any further needed information, and forward a positive recommendation for approval of the rezoning to the city council.
Okay, just a couple quick questions. I think you had mentioned that increasing the density here would help the city meet its growth targets under the Growth Management Act. So I was kind of curious on that issue. Does the city have adequate capacity under current zoning to meet its growth targets, or are rezones like this necessary to achieve those growth targets?
We're going to be doing some pretty significant rezoning, I think, in the next short period of time, because what we have now probably does not meet what we need to have.
Okay, so probably does not. I mean, did you guys do a buildable lands report in the last few years at all, or that kind of assess that issue in detail, or?
That's a process we're going through right now, actually, as part of the comprehensive plan amendments.
Oh, okay. And then the second question is, I think it, real pertinent. People always have to warn when you deal with site-specific rezones is that you don't have any specific project in mind, because once the rezone is approved, they can do anything they want that's consistent with the rezone. But I think one pertinent semi-project specific issue is, is there adequate infrastructure to handle the increase in density that'll be facilitated by the rezone? And we have a letter from Mr. Montana, who, it seems like his concerns are mainly focused on speeding that's in the area, as well as lack of sidewalks. But it kind of more generically touching on that issue is, I mean, do the roads in that immediate area have adequate level of service right now, or any of them, on the border of not meeting adequacy here? Or you had mentioned it's kind of an ideal spot for traffic purposes because you can go anywhere in the city, but what are those intersections like right now? Are they operating within adopted LOS at this point? And again, can they handle increases in density?
Yeah, our traffic or our engineering department looked at this project specifically, the rezone with the project attached to it, and did not have any concerns about that. To the west there on Cabot Drive is a stoplight at the highway. When you go in other directions, it's pretty much, kind of local streets. To note that Ely Street does have speed humps on it to try and control some of that speeding traffic. But again, this is, I understand the comments, concerns about speeding, unfortunately, is not really addressed by a rezoning, but it's something that, is definitely a concern. And I think the thing is about it too is, the mention of sidewalks is typically the only way that sidewalks are going to get built in areas like this are by redevelopment and new projects, because those projects will be building the sidewalks and doing the street widening and frontage improvements and all those sorts of things. So this is honestly kind of the first step in building some sidewalks on that street. So it's a positive.
Right. Okay. And it looks like the development to the north is zoned R4, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, so it sounds like, yeah, this, even though there's no R3 zoning anywhere, at least in the zoning map that I have, anywhere near this project site, it appears to be kind of a natural transition zone from R4 to the north, commercial to the west, and then the lower density residential to the east, basically.
Yes, that's how planners in our office kind of feel about it. You know, we took a look at it, and it seems like kind of a natural buffering itself, so.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's an important consideration, because otherwise you have to deal with spot zoning issues, but I think, a single spot rezone is considered okay if it serves as a logical transition zone, and I think you can make that point here, so. Okay, that seems to be pretty well done, so. All right, thanks, Mr. Lindberg. I think at this point, let's move on to applicant. Did the applicants want to say anything at this point, or don't have to, but okay, sir. If you could just tell us your last name, how to spell it, and then I'll swear you in.
Sure. I'm Scott Meeker. My last name is spelled Meaker. And
Okay, Mr. Lindberg, just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead.
So I'd just like to echo some of Ray's points. When we approached the city about this, we wanted the property to add to the walking community. There's commercial, to the west and to the northwest, and then there's multifamily across the street to the north. And we felt like this property is kind of one of the key properties for development, housing development in Oak Harbor, but it needs to be transitional. That's why if you look at the total number of units, it's less than what R3 requires. This allows us to do 1,500 square foot units with 2-car garages that'll fit well within the residential neighborhood. They're also facing north, and so as you drive up Cabot, you'll see these beautiful townhomes with front yards, green spaces, and it'll add to the beauty of an already beautiful city. Again, I'm a big proponent of walking communities. There's medical to the west, there's Home Depot, there's grocery stores, restaurants. This allows people to make a choice between driving a car, increasing congestion, or walking. And I think in this case, a lot of people will choose to walk and enjoy everything that's available close by. And I think that that's a very positive thing for a community. As Ray mentioned, we'd be putting in the sidewalks on Cabot Street. And I think in the long run, it's certainly not going to bring down values in the neighborhood. They're beautiful homes, and people will enjoy ownership of these homes. And it'll be a good transition, potentially even a better transition than the large unit to the west or to the north, although I really like it, and we need to take care of our seniors. This is a much less, a much less intense use of the land. And I think that architecturally, we've been smart in that it flows well with the slope of the land. My dad was an architect out of Arizona State. Form follows function is a big focus. This has windows to the north that give you lots of light inside without solar buildup. They live well. There's a lot of privacy since you can drive your car into your garage and enjoy your home. You can choose the amount of privacy you have, but you can also go out and utilize the front yards and interact with your neighbors. I think it's a good fit for Oak Harbor. I think it'll look beautiful in that area. I think it'll add to the overall, beneficially add to the city and increase the number of desirable units. We're excited about this, and we think it'll be a great project. Also, I want to acknowledge all the help that we received from Ray. A lot of the design aspects of this building, these homes, good design input was provided by the city of Oak Harbor, and I don't want to neglect that. I think that these projects always work better when the municipality and the developers work hand in hand to make sure that the city has a significant net benefit from these type of projects, and I want to thank them for their help.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Meeker. All right, now let's move on to public comments. Does anyone out in the audience want to say anything at this point on this application? If you do, just walk up to the podium and let us know your name, how to spell it, and have out your comments. Okay, no takers. Ms. Heller, is there anyone out in the audience you see that wants to speak today?
There is nobody else in the audience today.
Okay, all right then. Well, I guess that's that then. So, okay, I think, Mr. Lindberg, did you want to make any response to Mr. Meeker's comments or not?
No, I think we're good. He was a delight to work with and took our comments to heart, and we really appreciate that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and they were good comments too. So I'll go ahead and close the hearing. And as I said, I mean, it's normally you might be a little concerned that this is like going to be a little island of R3 with no R3 touching it or in proximity, but it seems like a really logical transition point for, a lot of the reasons Mr. Meeker stated in his testimony. And I'll forward all those comments to the city council, probably, very likely a recommendation for approval. But of course, I will also identify Mr. Montana's concerns and include that in the summary to the council as well. So with that, I think we're adjourned for today. All three great staff reports, and that made my job really easy, and we can handle this very efficiently.